No one, not two, in sky and seed sown, dream up shadows to love fear, shape change in the nether pool and drown with friends, arise anew again and again. Welcome to Mutant Manifesto. Today we have Amir and Jasmine on. I was really excited to do this episode for a few different reasons. We're going to get into some fun stuff. We're going to get into talking about someone that is near and dear to most, or if not all of us, Alexis Pauline Gumbs. And I think that what we've been trying to do on this podcast has been this questioning of the human, questioning of how to mutate or go beyond now and go beyond what it means, I don't know, to be alive in the world now. And I think that this goes along with a lineage that we're getting at in the podcast of like a cross species. I think we'll talk a bit about Undrowned, which is Alexis Pauline Gumbs' newest book, I believe. I think the subtitle is, I got it right here, Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals. And I'm really curious. So Amir is, a multivalent, what would you say, a quadruple threat artiste, a performance artiste. Jazz, also both friends. Jazz, a holy trinity girl boss of traversing the elite spheres of the world. Yeah, I mean, you're both very interesting in your life paths of from when we knew each other, when we met while studying in South Africa, to now. It's been really interesting that you both I feel like we'll get into this a little bit in relation to your work, because I wanted to talk about what you both have been up to as well, creatively. But so I would say that I wanted to just open up with this idea of getting beyond, whether that's beyond here and now, or beyond grief, beyond loss, which I think are some, from what I've seen of both of your works, like things that you've both worked on, Jazz, through writing. I haven't seen much else Jazz. I know you got involved with some film stuff as well. And Amir, a lot of your stuff has also been pretty visual lately, photography based. I watched a performance of yours a while ago that was a live streamed performance. And yeah, a lot of what you both seem to work in is very ceremonial, remembrance, and I think this gets at a lot of what Alexis Pauline Gumbs is getting at as well. And I'd like to talk a little bit about this getting beyond through ceremony, through ritual, through remembering, through grieving. And because I think a lot of us need this right now, I've had to come to terms with damn, I have some things that I have to really get beyond in order to be present for other, not just personal relationships and stuff, but political things, and how to do that, how to mutate, how to change, and how to get past yourself to something different or something larger. And yeah, and I think both of you also bring something that we've touched on a little bit here, but like I did not, I have not come from like a lineage of faith, and it's something that I am just realizing, like, I really wish that I took part in something like that growing up. Yeah, if either of you wanted to get into any of that, feel free to just talk about your personal lives or um, stuff relating to Alexis Pauline Gumbs, because yeah, I guess actually maybe I should ask, what do you remember what when you read M Archive? Which, yeah, M Archive, After the End of the World, is the first book that I read by Alexis Pauline Gumbs. And then I had recommended it to both of you, I think, or maybe just to Jazz. But and then
Yeah,
yeah, it
and
was
then
like,
something happened where I gave it to Amir, who met her, and
Yeah.
then
yeah,
she signed the book, and then I think I mailed it back to you or something like that.
no, she wrote a beautiful, beautiful thing in the one that it was mine or was intended for me at some point, where she like wrote, it was like, Carson, like, thanks for taking others with you into the clouds. And I was just like,
Yeah,
oh my god,
Yes.
like,
She
no
did
one's
sign
ever
you.
said anything like that.
Did sign you over.
yeah,
Yeah,
No,
so
she
how
dragged
was that
yeah.
experience?
in her signature. Can I just say she dragged me? She was just like, something about. She was like something about like your worthy shoulders. And I was like,
Oh no,
how do you
not
know?
you and worthiness.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, how did you see that so quick? Okay, but she's a seer, so it's not just an obvious struggle of mine. Hopefully. But yeah, what a blessing to meet her. One of the things she did in that talk that was interesting, that might be interesting for this conversation, was she opened up by doing a breathing exercise in which she invited people to put their hands on their chest, breathe in, breathe out, and bring people into the room with them. And then she asked a few people who they were bringing in. Yeah, just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's actually, I think, something that I was using as like an organizing, like a organizing thought, was like using breathing as this metaphor. Because actually, I'm going to read the back of like this little other book that I was kind of pairing with this, that is actually called Breathing. I really like this philosopher named Bifo Berardi, and he wrote this little book called Breathing, Chaos, and Poetry. In the back of it, even, I just picked it up the other day, and it's like, I read it a few years ago, but it says, we might conclude that if the human experiment was aimed at expanding the sphere of rationality and reducing chaos, the human experiment is over. The very tools that enabled the expansion of rationality and human control, science, technology, industry, and information, have subsumed life to abstraction, and living warmth can only be found outside the icy walls of the citadel of reason. Um, and why I was bringing this, because he like takes this book and organizes it through the act of breathing, as rhythm, breathing as survival, and it's actually very, like, it's almost like a sibling thing to Undrowned, because Undrowned started in very much the same way, about this like marine mammals as being these beings that still need to breathe air, which I kind of forgot about. Like, you live your life in water, but you still have to survive by breathing air. So you're living in like an impossibility in some sense. And so she's drawing like these lessons from marine mammals about how to live in like these impossible circumstances. And yeah, so the breathing in tandem with um, this, a lot of this also being about the ocean, and water, and it being like at a time where like ocean, so there's a lot of like flooding going on here. Again, this whole summer where I live, it's been really bad floods, and I've been really thinking about like living near water, in water, like as the earth heats up and the oceans rise, like where do we go and what do we do? Both on a poetic level, but on a very literal, like, I don't know, human like migration level as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. But back to the question, which was about beyond, you said? Yeah, I mean, I actually had, like, actually, I'll connect it to the thing you just said about breathing. So after my aunt died, we actually hired a death doula. Or I hired her. I shouldn't say we. Because I did it on my own. Forced this person onto my family against their will. But I hired this death doula, and she also was like, the first call was like, we're going to start with breathing, whatever. Like inhale, exhale, prepare to do this because one, it's difficult. And she was also kind of she's like a student of Audre Lorde, and then Alexis Pauline Gumbs was also a student of Audre Lorde, and Lorde's partner. So I think that's interesting that like she also did the same thing that Amir mentioned, was his experience at like the Alexis Pauline Gumbs book talk. And I think maybe, and like this is just me like galaxy braining after a nap, like because you're breathing, like I don't know, there's just like something that connects you more to not being alive when you're not breathing, because it's like when you like in the moments when you stop breathing, like it's kind of similar to like the whales or whatever, where you are experiencing like not being alive in those pauses, which honestly is why I usually like, also Amir does this even in our writing workshops, whatever. That's very much something Amir does, like, let's start with breathing. And like when I do that, I'm like, I forgot how to breathe, I'm gonna pass out. Like that's how I always feel. So I don't always, like, whenever someone's like, what if we start with breathing, I'm like panicking internally because I'm like, I don't want to think about that, because I don't know, it freaks me out and has always freaked me out. But I do think that there's something interesting about how those breathing exercise maybe sort of connect your body and mind with the other side.
Yeah, well, I think that like breath is the intrinsic part of a lot of different like spiritual and magical traditions, and it is something that's like also straddles the line between conscious and unconscious, just like a function that your body does, and then it can also be something that like expands your consciousness and is like very much aware. But then, yeah, in times of breath deprivation or in times of like hyperventilation, you can actually, and also by breathing slowly and very intentionally. These are all ways that people have of what like a chaos magic tradition would call achieving gnosis, which is like getting into a state where you can slip between realms, between the like physical and metaphysical, essentially. But I think this is a common practice among a lot of different traditions that have a type of spirit veneration or veneration of like ancestors or the dead. And I was wondering if that's something that you two were kind of touching on a little bit, and I was wondering if you could go into that more. What is this like? Were you saying, Amir, that Alexis Pauline Gumbs was asking like who people were bringing with them or something?
Yeah, I think she was asking about people outside of the room that they were bringing with them. So not necessarily only ancestors, or but it could have been alive people as well. And yeah, the whole notion of breath. I mean, I'm holding a lot of things, and this notion of breath, but also this notion of beyond. I think the text itself, this thing of like drowning. There's a lot of like shape shifting, and then the location of it. But for me, like breath, where that lands and what it makes me think of is recently having like had experiences of anxiety, it just manifested a new way in my life, in a really like embodied way that like lasted longer than a few, like, a few, like a day. I used to just have very intense panic attacks, but I would be chill otherwise. But then recently, like I started having these like feelings that I really was so foreign to me, and intense, like intense. I really felt like I was on the brink of, um, I feared that I was on the brink of losing my mind. And the only things that helped were breathing. And I wasn't even a practitioner of meditation in any big way. I used to do like 10 minutes sometimes with the Chani app, the astrology app. And I wasn't very good at it, or it didn't I didn't really know the meaning of it or need it necessarily. Like I had other spiritual practices that I felt were more necessary. But since then, which is about 2 or 3 months ago, like I literally meditate every day. You know what I mean? Because I need to now. Like I need to sit with my breath. Um, so that I think that was my introduction. I had to learn that lesson out of necessity. Like what, and for me, the breath was grounding. Right? It doesn't. I'm not seeking like a gnosis state. I'm not really. And sometimes as I'm meditating, yeah, I'm seeking like, okay, let me see what I can see or whatever. But mostly it's just about, okay, I need my chest to calm down, you know, and it helps. And I'm grateful for that. A lesson, breath. I read M Archive. Some of it on M Archive became like a spiritual text for me that I would sometimes kind of like open
Yeah.
for different things. Um, but what this, I mean, I also want to talk about X-Men at some point.
Yeah, I have,
The
I have that
97.
block.
Have you all seen X-Men 97?
My brother wants me to watch it
97?
so badly.
Yeah,
Netflix one.
97.
Yeah, I mean, please, Amir, please, like, describe it further. But I know it's like an X-Men series on Netflix that kind of goes into, is it the Apocalypse timeline of X-Men, and it gets really really deep into like the relationships between the mutants and their maybe apotheosis or eventual or potential apotheosis. Is that a accurate way of bringing in that storyline?
What does apotheosis mean?
Like becoming a god or ascension into the divine.
I don't. In some ways, I think like Storm and the Phoenix. Do we all know these characters? Do I have to describe them? Jazz, are you with us?
For the audience, the listener.
Okay, right.
Yes, I know about X-Men.
Okay. So Storm, she has the power to control the weather and weather patterns, and then Jean is a telekinetic and telepathic person who is inhabited by this cosmic force called the Phoenix, and they're both considered Omega level mutants, which means their powers can't be scaled. So, and what's interesting in this season is that Storm loses her power. Oh, shit. That's a big spoiler. Sorry. Sorry. But anyway, something happens to Storm. I won't get into it. And she has to go on this whole journey. And it's just anyway. So there's this way that, somebody concocts to inhibit a mutant's powers. She becomes victim to that. And Oh my goodness, that storyline I identified with so much. And then she goes to this other mutant's house in the desert, and this mutant is indigenous to the Americas and so practices some indigenous magic. But anyway, and she's haunted by this owl demon. And the owl demon is like, like, you know. And the owl demon at one point, oh, I don't know, he's taunting her, and she was like, I do not fear death. And then the owl demon was like, oh, I know. That's why you rush to play dead. That's why you rush to play dead. Because the owl's whole point was like, didn't you just tell your sister, Jean, oh, I wonder what it's like to be human. I wish to be human and whatever. And like, oh, and Storm is like identifying. But she was just like, I was so tired, right? So tired that she would give up this cosmic level kind of power. And yeah, that storyline was just like, damn, like how many of us have, you know, differences that are powerful but that, you know, are difficult in some ways to hold and, you know, would give it up, you know, would identify with that struggle.
Wait, so she gave her powers away?
Yeah, that's what I was like. I'm wondering about.
No,
Yeah.
but the owl kind of revealed that process revealed to her that nobody could take her power away from her. And so even though she had this technology she regained her power mysteriously, because she was just like she refused to, you know, to play dead. So it wasn't so in other words, like this technology took her power away, but the owl revealed to her that underlying that, the only reason the technology works is because she herself.
She wanted to. Yeah,
Yes.
wanted to them not to be active. Because then it would make her vulnerable.
Yes, it would make her vulnerable. Yes, and then the owl was like, yes, play dead. Otherwise, like the hatred of the world or something like that will rain down upon you, reminding her reason for like accepting her fate. And then she decides not to accept it. So I think that's a nice lesson, because it's like, okay, there are things in this world that would seem to take our power away, but to be reminded, like, you know, it's only when we allow it, you know. Anyway, so that was a beyond kind of moment for me. That's what I'm thinking about in terms of transformation and
interesting. Yeah, I feel like Jackie has some things to. I just wanted to touch real quick on like the last episode was a lot to do with fate, and I think a lot of the project and the conversations that we've had so far have been about difference and the power of difference and different abilities, and actually I'll stop there. Jackie, did you want to say something?
I was gonna maybe link some of the themes there to M Archive a little bit, to Alexis Pauline Gumbs, but I thought it was really interesting the way that you highlighted this moment of like a technological suppression of one's gift, so to speak, and this idea that there's sort of this battle between looking at it as a technological or sort of a inner gift, the like ability to control the weather, and how it took like a demonic presence to sort of like challenge her and like kind of wake her up from the journey she had taken, or just like helped her understand the journey she had taken and accepted through this contact with this like suppressing sort of toxin. I don't know.
Dream up shadows to love through. So just the importance of like shadow figures in this journey of transformation. And even Storm says it in other words, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she was like, what are demons but like our shames and guilt and stuff like that, after she was healed and got her powers back.
I was gonna maybe like talk briefly about what M Archive is a little bit. M Archive is essentially like a very poetic, sort of like apocalyptic narrative, right? Like, it's a sort of a fragmented and like poetry laden exploration of like how we get from. It's like a myth making process too. How we get from like here to like liberation, and it takes so many like mystical turns. So I think that what I've really find compelling about a lot of Alexis Pauline Gumbs' writing is that it straddles the line between political, like scientific, like ecological scientific, and like magical and poetic. It like brings in like all these different sort of sociological or like biological studies, and sort of like this practice of like just seeing what's there and like cataloging it and like doing history and stuff, but then combines that with like blatant like spell work and stuff, and then also has like this political stuff that she'll bring in and just say like, okay, here's how capitalism is like entwined in this very thing that we're resisting. Yeah, but I just wanted to kind of, for the listeners, kind of let them know what, like, there's a lot of themes that are similar between this X-Men narrative that Amir brought in and the narrative of M Archive, perhaps. This protagonist, this like loose protagonist, has to like completely kind of let go of this world in a lot of ways, and then like hold on to certain aspects of it in like a sort of like faith-based way, and then just like, I don't know, I remember this part about like women burying themselves in dirt and just like just sitting there and just sitting through these like worldly transformations as like an act of resistance, and that was just their act of resistance, just like being buried in the dirt. Things like that are like her routes towards liberation. They're sort of like they're like trans rationality, they're not like rational actions.
I have a question for folks. Maybe, yeah, I'm just interested because some of you, two of you, I'm just meeting. Carson, I'm just meeting again.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, what I'm curious about, like maybe moments that, and of course you're included in this, Jazz, even though we just saw each other. I'm just interested in like what in this concept of a beyond, like, have you had recent experiences of having to move beyond something, and yeah, and whether like those other things had any place in that process, like faith-based stuff, magic, or
Yeah. Well, obviously to Amir, Carson, you guys don't follow me on Instagram. But my aunt, who is my dad's sister, who like I grew up with, who lived down the street from me my whole childhood, got cancer last year and passed away in December. So that was sad, and I just like, it was just probably like the first death that I've experienced that was deeply like like I can't imagine any other death that would affect me more other than my own parents. And because this sort of happened so quickly that I just wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting this to be the first major death that I dealt with in my life. Like, obviously, you know, my grandparents passed, whatever, but they were old or sick, what have you. Um, but the process after that, I had to move beyond my old job, and I literally quit because they were not good people during it. So I'm past that. But in terms of like, it just made me think really crazily about death, because um, I grew up super religious. Like I grew up very Christian, evangelical Christian. Unfortunately, unfortunately in some ways. So, oh, am I freezing?
No.
Okay. So I had a very narrow like worldview, and it really like freaked me out. Like going outside of it, like everything outside of it was like always bad or demonic or yeah, just like kind of freaky. So I was just like it wasn't until like literally when I went abroad in South Africa, I met Carson and Amir and other people that I sort of thought outside of this very narrow way of life. And it does make you like panic, like, which is why I'm like, I don't like, and I was talking to someone about this yesterday, I don't like when people like invalidate someone's religious beliefs very coarsely because it's really like, it's like crazy if like the whole way you understand the world is being undermined aggressively. Like it's so like unmooring. Like and it's really like I don't know, maybe if non-religious people don't understand it, but like it's like it completely like fucks up your entire like it's like almost like your brain can't even comprehend it. Like someone's coming, like an alien's coming and telling you like there's like a whole world you know like that you've been living in that you didn't even know existed, and here it is, and everything that you were living in was wrong. Like if someone did that and it was true, like imagine how that would make you feel. And that's a lot of how um detaching from a very all-encompassing religion feels. But in the process I had to learn about like death or mortality in a very strange way that like because a lot of the Christian conclusions about death were very insufficient to me. I felt that they were kind of like they're very passive. They're very like it's just like it's not super comforting, honestly. When you lose someone quickly, to be like, oh, they're the actual like biblical textual Christian belief is that a person dies, they're asleep, they wait until everybody like the rapture comes, and then we all go to see Jesus together. So everybody that's dead is kind of just like sleeping, inactive, whatever. But I liked the idea that I was hearing from other people that they're like these dead people were like doing these things. Like there was a book called Signs, I forgot who wrote it. But she basically is like, oh, you know, their lyrics to songs or whatever, just like that the people that pass would just like pop up in these like interesting ways for them, in ways that they knew like had to be them. It couldn't have been anyone else. And I was like, oh my God, like I want that. Like that has to be true. And then I started thinking about like reincarnation, because we sort of like Black people, Black American people, I should say, sort of acknowledge this. They'll be like, that baby's been here before, like that baby's been here before, which means like they're basically a reincarnated person, but like we would never say that, but like that's something that we sort of tacitly believe. So I was like, oh my God, maybe there's like secret things that we already believe in that we didn't know. So yeah, I did kind of just like a lot of exploring about that. And it was just more of like opening up my, like if before my view of death was like this, like now it's kind of like that. There's more stuff that goes on. And that's how I was able to, or that's how I am currently still able to cope. Like sometimes it's not as always effective, whatever. Like I'm just like, I don't know if I see anything, or I'm just like, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to have a baby. Maybe it'll be Dana or something like that, you know, which is like a kind of weird, but like that's sort of what I'm thinking. Because I'm like, oh, like it's so weird to not be able to see her. But yeah, slowly expanding my definition of death has helped me get beyond that. And then I had an experience where I was with my boyfriend and his like work colleague who's like a very like atheist, like we are just chemical reactions, whatever. Like, and he was describing to me like what his perception of death was. I literally started hysterically crying, like, because it was so like, what the fuck? Like, I refuse to consider this. And I had to like tell other people that I was like, listen to what this person was saying to me. Like, they're crazy, right? Like, please validate that this is not true. So yeah, obviously I still have my limitations, but like that was like the first time in a while I heard something that I was like, I have never considered this. Please get this out of my brain. I want to unknow this. Like, I don't even want to know about this at all. That people think this way.
Yeah, if I may just steer us in this, like, this is something I wanted to ask you, Jazz, was like, I had read your piece and it was talking about like, grief as like an actual reconfiguration of your brain. And I'm really into this, like, really into like the interplay between like, yeah, like Jackie was saying about Alexis Pauline Gumbs, of like science and maybe like what we could call like very literal, real things. But also like that this getting this like beyond part for me, a lot of it has been like a recognition of like the science and the real things. Like, for example, something that really rocked me when I first read M Archive was the constant emphasis on soil and dirt and the underwater, the sea floor, and specifically in relation to like the Atlantic slave trade, and that the literal sand, the elements that we're talking about are people, were people that were en route to the New World. And like the remembrance that this is fact, but like it sounds so magical, but that the remembering is like an act of like a ceremonial act that is poetic and allows you to like get outside of reason, perhaps, because but what's weird is it's like I'm thinking about it through like thought, through reason, but through that I'm also attaining something that is like beyond. And that's where I feel like maybe poetry as like this excess of language, this like this weaving in and out of like, and I love how she does this. Yeah, like talking about like marine biology, but also like these like really truthy, quippy like lines. Like she's quite an oracle. But yeah, so I guess I had wanted to ask Jazz about like, because you touched on some of the questions that I had of like this getting outside of practicality, I think you called it, like thinking about this practicality or like death through these ways. And then you related it to the story of Lazarus, which I don't really know much about. And I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but like Jesus's divine hypostasis. I was curious if you could just touch a little more on that, like what you were thinking when you were writing that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was thinking a bit about ironically the movie The Book of Clarence. I don't know if anybody saw that. With Lakeith Stanfield. It's on Netflix now. It didn't make a lot of money. This is why people weren't watching it, but it's on Netflix, so you can go watch it now. But basically, it's filmed by James Samuels, who did the what was it called? Harder They Fall on Netflix, which is like a Black Western reimagination. But in this book, basically, it's about one of the disciples, Thomas, aka Doubting Thomas, who doubts that Jesus has been resurrected in the Bible in real life. He has like a secret twin brother who is like, yeah, like I want to get in on like this money this Jesus guy is connecting, like with whatever he's doing. So basically, he starts faking that he is also a Messiah. Like they're doing like fake uh, miracles, whatever, etc. But like there's sort of like a turn in the movie, spoiler alert, that like it almost seems he does have some sort of power, like his faith in, or like the faith that everybody that he's like generating in people, like has almost given him some power, like powers, uh, or some Christ-like powers. Um, and yeah, it's not totally clear, but like watching that and like discussing it with my friend after, like it was the first time I considered. I was like, what if Jesus like was like some guy, like this Clarence person, like, and he was just kind of like, yeah, like he was just kind of like a crazy guy. Like people say stuff, people like there are people that are like saying like creating religions whatever all the time, and like I'm just like, oh my god, like who does this person think he is? So it's sort of like the first time I considered that. Um and then like just randomly this thought came to me when I was like writing in my journal one day about Lazarus. And the story of Lazarus is that Jesus just had this friend like who was sick and then he died, and then like he brought him back to life. And I think, and I was thinking about it because the way it's described in the Bible is that like in the very like traditional translations, is that Jesus knew Lazarus was going to die, so he intentionally waited for him to die, went back, and then um would raise him from the dead after he was dead, like so it could be a show of God's power. Like this is would draw people to faith. But the person writing the book, I believe, was John the Baptist, who loved Jesus. Jesus loved him. Like he was like obviously one of his bigger supporters. So it's like John the Baptist had like a motivation to write this in this way. They were cousins. Oh, John, yeah, John was his cousin.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Or no, they were like basically they were like cousins because it was like his Mary's like bestie Elizabeth, like they were both pregnant at the same time, and then like you know the story, like they're John the Baptist jumped in Elizabeth's stomach when she sees Mary, who's because the baby knows that it's Jesus, or something like that. That's the story. So John and Jesus, they go way back. That being said, when John's writing about Jesus after he dies, is resurrected, whatever, he sort of has he is his apostle, like he's really like his disciple. He's really like writing to convince people of the story of Jesus. And it made me think that it was like, and this was something that we learned in Catholic school, that Jesus is fully human, fully divine. There was a word we used, I don't remember, online. It's like that hypostasis word. I've never seen it before. But it's like Jesus is at the same time fully man, fully divine. That's why we can do what Jesus, in theory, us people can do, live a life like Jesus, because he had all the temptations of a human being and then chose to sin, not to sin. So all that to say that John is basically saying Jesus knew Lazarus was going to die. Like, that's why he waited to go. That's why, and he knew that when he got there, and if he rose him, like, resurrected him, everybody would then believe in God, like, because they saw this miracle happen. But I was thinking, like, if Jesus was fully human and his, like, bestie died, like, Jesus did not have many friends, to my knowledge. Like, he had Mary Magdalene, Lazarus, John the Baptist, but he was like kind of weirdly obsessed with him. So that wasn't like a normal friendship. That was like his fan. So he's trying to say like, oh, he waited on purpose, blah, blah, blah. But it could have just been that he was away and Lazarus died and he got there. And like, and one of the books says Jesus wept. So he was sad. Like, he was crying that he arrived late and his sick friend had already passed. And I was so I started Googling, like, why did Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead? Why did Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead? And everybody was saying because he was showing the power of God. He was showing the power of God. But it was also like, he was human. What if he just, like, this was the one time he was using his power as a god for this selfish reason. He was like, I'm just going to do this. Like, I can do it and I want to do it and I can. And to me, that was like, that was a human with God powers, because that's what we would do. Like, if there was like, if in that situation you had the powers of a god, you were only supposed to use them for the purpose of, you know, converting people, bringing them into the clouds, whatever, with you. Like, that really wouldn't be like something that's on your, like, high on your priority list. Like, you're just going to go to your friend's tomb and bring him back to life. Yeah, so that story, like, ironically, I was like, maybe like this Jesus guy wasn't just some guy, because that sounds like something so human to me, and like that everybody was like creating this lore around it, but really it was just like he just wanted his friend back, and he had the ability to do so, so he did.
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I know Josh has been trying to say something about it.
I had a lot of thoughts, but they're kind of all over the place. So maybe this isn't like the. Anyway, I'll just pose some of the questions and things that as you were speaking, Chaz, that I was thinking of. I think when you were mentioning the Gospel of Clarence or the Book of Clarence, I was thinking of this. Like, I don't even know what it's actually called, but I kind of coined it as like the Tinkerbell theory of divinity, where, you know, gods come and go based on how people believe and have faith in them. So this is where you get concepts around the conflicts of religions, where, you know, you're not supposed to worship these idols and this, that, and the third to demonstrate a divine entity's power, because this is like conquering other gods. I think the Old Testament often talks about being a better god than other entities, right? Like Baal and all of these, I guess I want to call them like Sumerian gods or what have you, like that precede the Jewish / Christian god. Then there was another idea of like, I think connecting to what Carson said, around getting outside of practicality, and this goes between like letting Lazarus die and John trying to explain that in a practical way, but then also Jesus, if that being true, like Jesus weeping feels like it's not practical for him to do that, right? And trying to find reasons to explain the divine, and that being a thing. And these are just all things that kind of spawned with what you're saying. And then there was another moment, and I don't quite know how to locate this, but you brought up, or it brought up for me, this idea of, and this is like way, way back into like the breathing and breathing as sort of a transfer in space, but also a space of calm, and thinking about death as like, okay, lack of breathing, etc. And again, to you, Amir, just about like being dead or playing dead. I don't know, a unifying concept, right? That I think is like, okay, how did Jesus wait and pronounce someone dead, right? Like what goes into, okay, we don't have the defibrillators, we don't have, I guess you can like test to see if they're breathing above their thing, but that's kind of a means of declaring someone dead. And there are a couple of things in that. I think I'm kind of waxing poetic, trying to quickly put a lot of things together, but did any of those ring out to you? Maybe if we go with the Tinkerbell theory, quote unquote, is that something that you were considering with the Jesus relationship with Lazarus? Like, he had enough belief or needed to generate more faith in order to have this miracle happen? And potentially, I don't know. And I had some questions about M Archive, but I'll have to save those for later. I feel like I just kind of ran away for a second. So let me pause there.
Josh, anybody ever told you you look like Arthur?
Yes. I've heard this because of the glasses. If I take them off, I seem to resemble Mos Def a little bit. That's what they used to say way by the water in church, actually, to make fun of me. So
Okay. Anyway, I was just thinking that. I was like, wow, who does he look like? Anyway,
imagine the fist.
Yeah, I was imagining it. Thinking about Lazarus, I really want to revisit that text, but just to see textually what's happening, because I love the text. But what came up for me was some other time Jesus healed somebody, and he was like, "Oh, by your faith you are healed." And I think I might ascribe not completely to the Tinkerbell theory. I think it's a combination of things. I think the things we have faith in will always in some way show up for us, because I think our mind does that. Our mind, I think, subconsciously is convincing us of what we believe to be true. And at the same time, specifically in the Christian, in my understanding of how faith works in the Christian thingy, I think faith is the way to activate whatever God power there is. And without it, the power doesn't exist. And so I think they not that the power doesn't exist, maybe, but maybe it doesn't exist for you. You know what I mean? And so I think about those two things. I had this conversation. I don't know how true this is, but so listeners, feel free to refute this. But I'd be interested also. I've just been interested about it, and I just never had the opportunity to look into it. I met this person who, just on a bus randomly, and they had done, they had either went to seminary or done like divinity school, and they were saying that the God of the Old Testament, like pre the Old Testament in the Jewish tradition, it was polytheistic, and that the God of the Old Testament is one of their many gods, and that specific God was in charge of like war and conquering, and it was necessary at that time because the people of the Old Testament, that was their primary concern, was kind of like expanding territory, or like the promised land and stuff like that. And so, which is why the God of that Old Testament seems so gung ho about just fighting. That God is always fighting somebody. You know what I mean? And yeah, like I think if we all agree and believe and say this is who God is and this is all that God is, then, naturally God becomes that. Because at the end of the day, outside of our own perception, the only other things we have to give evidence to what we believe in are other people and their beliefs. So I feel like I ascribe to the Tinkerbell thingy a little bit, but I think it's not exclusively faith that makes power or makes godhood real, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I had a quick question to with that, I guess, religious official in training, were they potentially referencing Christianity slash Judaism in relation to Zoroastrianism? Like, I know that there are connections between those faiths, and I don't know. Maybe that's just maybe a maybe that's just a question to put out there. And then another thing. So if to use the Tinkerbell theory, I'm sorry if that's not what it's called, but to connect a lot of things, I'm hearing a connection between faith in the divine, hope as a maybe concept or the desired outcome to negative entities and effects on the world, and then they're both sort of in combat with death, right? Like Jesus conquered death by dying on the cross, but also the apocalypse being the sort of unity of both faith, hope, and death, because we don't really know. John has revelation and he's trying to give us a puzzle to solve to tell us what the end of the world is going to look like. But all of this is, as we sort of digest it now, is resting on both faith in a specific religious practice, hope in that we have potentially chosen the right one towards the ends of trying to be on the better side of the not burning in the apocalypse. But does M-Archive have some sort of link to that form of the apocalypse? If it combines all of these sort of divine elements, also I get the scientific elements, and the women burying themselves is also pretty interesting. But is that an act of defiance for politics, defiance on... I haven't read M-Archive, so let me just say that. But it just seems like, I don't know, maybe I'm going off the rails here, but I often, maybe let me clarify, I often view religion as a means of trying to understand the things that are unseen, and the grand thing that's unseen is what happens after death, right? And apocalypse being this great death event across the world in the Christian faith is bringing back the dead into the realm of the living, or this is a great sort of liminal barrier break where everything is kind of combining into one, and we're also, to use going beyond, transcending into a different sort of timeline, so to speak. And so maybe a grounding question here would be, how do you see faith, hope, and processing death in these times where it feels like we are rapidly approaching some form of apocalypse? And you can take that in any way. I know that I had some political things that I wanted to say, but I want to let y'all run with those questions.
I kind of wanted to offer a quote from M-Archive that I have in my albums. She writes, "Dreams will get through. Even if you stopper up your mouth and tighten up your behind, you are not airtight. However shallow you make your breathing, the depth is there." And then it ends with, she didn't know she was ready, that part. So I also want to, and then connect this to a Bible verse. I don't know the numbers, but part of the Bible says that the Spirit also knows our infirmities and therefore intercedes on our behalf. So even though we're praying for things and we're exercising faith in certain ways or exercising hope in certain ways, there's this other current. That's what the Bible is saying, that is aware of our infirmities. And I see infirmities as like maybe just like source. Oh, sorry, I got scared, but that's my sock. I touched something. I was like, "What the fuck is that?" Anyway, yeah, and this dreams will get through. Meaning, like the dreams, this world, this faith, this power space, is a current on its own that's gonna do whatever, even if we're not ready, even if we don't have faith or hope or etc. The apocalypse thing, that's tough because I don't know. I feel like ever since the Bible was written, people, been anxiously awaiting the apocalypse. I really hope it doesn't come because I just want as much of a regular life as I can. Like I would like to go to the grocery store or,
Yeah, really. I don't think it's going to happen anymore. Oh, you can go, Jackie. I see your hand.
I just had a couple things with the apocalypse and this other theme tension I wanted to highlight with this conversation. There's been on one hand, there's the fact that it's pretty annoying when people are always trying to blow your mind and always trying to bring you from one perspective to a wider one, or from a wider one to a more narrow one. When people are saying like, oh, the world works this way, like this thing that you experience as a metaphysical union with God is actually just chemistry in your brain. Or vice versa, when somebody introduces you to a concept that you can't unthink, that like expands your worldview, and all of a sudden you are unstabilized by that knowledge. So that there's this tension between when are you ready and like when will the knowledge come? Because also I think the universe sometimes does, or whatever you want to say, does sometimes push you into these circumstances to open you up, like, because you will never say that you are ready. You'll never tell yourself that you're ready. So like the universe needs to kind of like break open that perspective somehow. So there is like a kind of like holy or like higher aspect of being like sort of against your will brought into a larger understanding. And then there's also kind of maybe a lower version that it's a little bit more that's just like isn't of a certain isn't of the same purpose necessarily. But I feel like both of those relate to this idea of apocalypse. I think that so many people actually like yearn for an apocalypse and for an apocalyptic break with what is happening, because they feel honestly like tortured by the daily routine, the monotony of the world. But then there's, on the other hand, people that, like Amir was saying, just want to go to the grocery store and like hang out with their family and friends, and it's a beautiful life. So it's like, again, like, how do you, sometimes it's hard to access one or the other realm of existence. And I feel like there's sort of this this desire for the apocalypse because people think that it will bring everybody to the same reckoning, the same like understanding at the same time. And I think that that's not how it works, because I feel like everyone's beliefs intersect in such unique ways that we'll never have like one big thing where the same thing happens to everybody. But I don't know. Do those threads make sense to connect?
They make sense. I think. I mean, I'm still curious about how these ideas are resonating personally for us, in terms of like our personal desires around apocalypse. I feel like Jackie and Josh and maybe Carson might be kind of hoping it comes soon.
No, wait, hold on. I was just speculating here. I was literally just, providing context for like I mean, I don't know. People, it's things are tense, and I think people feel that tension. And there are some folks, as Jackie was saying, that like want a great thing to break, so that we'll actually have to invent and rethink some of the structures. Okay, Jackie, but wait, rethink some of the structures that we have, like that are oppressing people, right? And that we know to be true. So, or know as true. Or Jackie.
One of my favorite animals is the manatee, and in Undrowned, Alexis Pauline Gumbs has meditations on the manatee. Undrowned is incredible to me, and it's extremely generous with its like love and its ability to see both connection and difference, like in tandem, connection through mammalness, but then like also respect difference. But there are so many times when she's doing like odes to different types of animals that just really like that really caught me, because it was also saying it to me, and to, she was also saying, she keeps saying I love you to these different animals. She was also saying it to me in certain ways. And so like one of those things was she was talking about these like beautiful giant manatees that that have gone, extinct, and how they just like their way of just like holding so much wisdom and emotional capacity and memory and community, and just like living such a gentle and slow and interdependent life. And then like the just by the process of capitalism, fur trade, and then after that, just like the disrupted ecologies that these manatees were in, being just sort of too chaotic to keep this life form alive. But I think that part of the desire for a certain type of breakage is actually that, it's this idea that if enough stuff breaks, then maybe we will actually have more chances to get into these temporary modes of gentle being with, actually, ironically, that are, because right now so much of what I have to do to pay my bills is just so radically out of alignment with that.
Okay, I'm hearing. I just wanted to repeat back this. So there's something about these odes to the marine life that I think epitomize a certain kind of way of being that you're hoping the apocalypse can facilitate, basically.
Yeah, but I'm also acknowledging the fact that, like, for these animals, their apocalypse has already come, and apocalypse is never a singular thing, you know? So that's why I think that, like, I might have a, like, fantasy about an apocalypse that leads you to that place, but the reality is it'll never be unitary. It'll never be something, I don't think, that, like, brings everyone to the same stage. And so the thing is, and it's happening already, like, we're going through the apocalypse. Like, depending on who the we is, right? So it's like how do we survive, and in which ways, and like how can we find hope on the other side of these transformations, as opposed to trying to defend a certain way that we're already existing. Because my thing is, I think the changes are coming. So like how do we, shape within that and try to seek something within that, knowing that it's not just what you want, like you were saying, what you pray for, but also what your holy guardian angels, spirits, ancestors, what they put upon you too. It's like there's fate and nemesis, to put it a different way. There's like what you're seeking to get, and then there's also going to be the stuff that happens whether you want it to or not. But I think that we should be trying to orient some direction, And I feel like for me, it's that kind of manatee way of being is like a really hopeful one.
This thing of like one marine life, it's lit down there, it seems to me. They know what's going on. Trees also. I think things are happening with trees. And the way I think this idea of apocalypse, and even in Undrowned, kind of like how we get to know these different species and the individual kinds of ways that apocalypses show up for them. I feel like, honestly, yeah, in this way that it's not unitary, or like it probably wouldn't ever be global until like maybe atomic war or something. Because thinking of all these historical like changes and revolutions, right? They were all so gradual and so specifically located in different places. I think more about how, if this breakage is what we desire or what we're calling in or what is fated to us, how it's manifesting in our individual and communal lives. Because honestly, the closest thing I've experienced to apocalypse is grief. Is because it's it just like Jazz writes. I haven't read it yet, but I love this. Just it's a rearranging of the brain, And I read this thing about memory, which was I can't even remember who wrote it, but it was just saying that like memory that isn't like a collection of files. It's and they were using this thing of like throwing a ball and catching it. Do you know it, Josh? No? I saw you smile. Okay, never mind.
Sorry, you made me think of something. I'll continue in a second. 1 second.
Yeah, they were using the analogy of throwing a ball and catching it. It's not that your mind categorizes, oh, this is a ball, it moves at this so and so velocity, and it's calculating those things. But it's that the mind connected to the body like enacts a relationship in real time to this moving figure. And that every time that happens again, it's just reenacting. So memory, rather, not as like this thing that lives somewhere, but as an embodied thing that is just like learned actions that we're reenacting. And when we think of grief and these people that are so central to us, I lost my father in 2016, just before I met Jazz and Carson in South Africa. These people that are so central to us, and like the fact that when we think of them, like our bodies are moving in specific ways, and for the thing that the thought refers to not exist anymore, and for the body to like it's literally a rewriting of reality, you know what I mean, for the absence of someone. So that's that those are my kind of like where this is personally kind of landing for me is I feel I dread losing other people who are close to me, but it will happen, and I feel like having survived that one, and it really is like, it's like when people haven't experienced that, it feels like you're on the other side of a fence almost, you know what I mean? And it's you with all the people who have dead relatives, and then everybody else who hasn't experienced like serious grief. So, and in that way, like the worlds are different. One version of myself, my world ended already, and I've experienced other deaths that have been similarly. So, I guess it is all to say I'm not afraid of the apocalypse, because I don't think it's as scary as losing loved ones, to be honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, basically, you just like said what I said when I wrote that in the essay. Like, even though you haven't read it, which is like crazy. But yeah, it's basically exactly what you just said, and I totally agree. Like, I'm like, I actually never. I love this thing Jackie said that there are apocalypses happening all the time. There is no one unitary event. Because I only recently started internalizing that belief. Because like I literally used to be afraid of the sound of trumpet because I was afraid that the world was ending and I wasn't going to be ready. Like many Christians actually have that trauma of like you cannot hear a trumpet sound without being like, oh fuck, like it's happening and I'm not ready or I'm getting left or something like that. Yeah, no, I don't think there will be a single apocalyptic event. I think the world ends first people every day and then starts again. So so now I'm not worried about it anymore. I used to be greatly worried about it, but now I'm like, oh, it's fine.
I feel like the fear of being left behind or leaving someone behind is like the worst part about like my fear of death. I feel like that's another maybe another reason why people desire for apocalypse maybe is this idea that like a universal apocalypse because it's this idea that we'll all go together. But again, I don't think we get it that simply. And actually, this is interesting. My family, my like dad's family are from Seventh-day Adventists, so there's definitely this like emphasis on apocalypse in that faith. As far as I'm aware, I don't really know too much about it. But it's funny because I have sort of, and I wonder if this is also, just something about how we not only, like maybe we have memories and imprints from our like recent ancestors as well. Not just like, memory being, maybe we play out sort of like future memories of our ancestors or something. But I'm thinking about the anxiety of like when like the apocalypse is going to happen, so I have to be ready for it. Sometimes I have this weird phobia that I'm in some kind of like sci-fi like pod, like the Matrix pod or something. But the thing is, it would be so scary to actually step out of that pod into that universe. I feel like sometimes you get glimpses of it, but you're like, no, send me back in, like because it's too scary to like.
Wait, what glimpses? Tell us when you've had glimpses, please. If we can escape, let us know.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I remember watching this really stupid movie that was like about like the simulation hypothesis, and there was a part where somebody was just going on about this concept that like this could be one of many different scenarios. Like maybe the fact that things are looking so strange in the world outside is an attempt to wake us up and get us to come to the realization that this is all a dream. But not only that, but we need to wake up out of the dream because we're on some kind of spacecraft that's approaching a sun or something, and we need to step out into the spacecraft to like initiate the next sequence or whatever. Or maybe it's because like we have, are hallucinating in some like, distant reality, and they can tell that we're having like a bad trip or something, and they're just trying to bring us out of that. But for some reason, when that person was discussing the idea that like maybe the reason why all these things seem to be so strange in the world is because you're being told that it's time to wake up, and that like really, I started to feel the like the curtains part a little bit, and I was like, no, you know what I mean? Because I also have this thing where I don't know if I can trust my mind as well. I think you maybe mentioned that because I kind of identify as like on the schizo spectrum. So it's another question. Is like if I go mad, if I transcend to that world where like I'm waking up in the real world as opposed to the simulation, does that really mean that I've just lost my marbles and that everyone else has to take care of me now? So that's another fear I have.
I mean, I feel like conversations like these make it feel like, okay, I'm not crazy. Because, like, I have similar feelings and sentiments. I used to think that there was that we're all, like, the simulation theory, and my way of processing it was that we're all in a video game. The reason why we grew up in this time where technology is so rapidly advancing is that we're getting to this part of VR where the game that we are playing currently is invented. I mean, Rick and Morty like has that Roy game or whatever, but it's like the game is going to be invented. Once the game is invented, like it's just a matter of time until you're like, you know what, I'm gonna try it out, and you put on the headset and then you wake up into the real world. That was one fear that Jackie sort of made me remember. There's also I literally wrote down just that like fear of insanity. Like there's this, I don't know, I used to be afraid that I'm actually not experiencing the world as I think I am, and I'm just being carted around in an asylum somewhere and like so heavily medicated that I can't actually tell what I'm currently being faced with. And like when, I don't know, I'll like, if I black out or something I don't remember, or all of the like there, it gets scarier when you're like, oh, when I'm asleep, is this actually me sort of coming to before being sedated once again by some sort of monitor system? And then, you know, I've had some, and this is going to be, I don't know, trigger warning for mental health and stuff, so pause. Do you want me to stop here? But I can continue if people are comfortable with that. There are just some moments where, yeah, Jackie, what were you going to say?
No, I was just gonna. I feel like this podcast is kind of it thoughtfully goes beyond trigger warnings, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're like, when I was at my lowest forms of depression, let me call it that, and like, there's this call to death feeling that like, it was terrifying and comforting at the same time, and you're just like, I want to be sucked into this, and at times I would rationalize that as like waking up, like, oh, I'm trying to like break free from this timeline. And then, you know, sort of as I maybe leaned away from those urges and tendencies and this sort of like the hollowness feeling, I then started thinking of like timelines and different scenarios where like, oh, like this close call with this train, like I just went into a new timeline. Like that there was a timeline where I dropped into this, I'm gone. And like the thing that keeps me going is like, oh, I haven't reached the peak of this specific timeline. All of this is to say that when it comes to the apocalypse, death, and preparedness for it, like the fact that it is unknowable, and that like I have to trust in my current surroundings to like even an inkling of a like percent, it gives me maybe this feeling that my body or whatever it is constantly adapting to what's being pumped into it, be it like environments, be it other sorts of stimuli, and it just keeps me present. So I don't know necessarily when it comes to the apocalypse if I'm afraid of it, if I'm prepared for it, or if I'm sort of resigned to its inevitability. But all of those things start to fuse together when I feel like the world is accelerating towards a pain point, let's say, and I have no control over that pain point. And I think that those brushes with maybe fractured senses of existence is a good way to say it. I don't know. It's like a defense mechanism. Like with those brushes, I'm like, oh, I can just sit with that, and that death is an inevitability. My death will leave something behind. There's also, there's something, I don't know, a little bit beautiful about the concept of maybe like once I'm gone, I am kind of food for the worms. Once society or the apocalypse happens, there is this sort of ultimate fragmentation where I disintegrate, even my sense of self disintegrates. And if the theory of the conservation of matter is to be extended into the spiritual and to like maybe even more, if we want to go numinous ways, that like I'm inherently a part of a system, I will dissolve back into that system, and maybe ideas of reincarnation, ideas of coming back are all sort of rooted in a genetic, almost like atom deep hope that like at some point this amalgamation will happen again in a new timeline well beyond what we can even conceive of, because we are fundamentally pieces of a whole larger system. Science corroborates this and the divine tries to explain this, but at the same time we're only thinking linearly, because now I'm getting a little out of hand. I'm going into the time thing. That's a dangerous trap. I'm going to stop. But there's a level of peace that I think like me being insane, this simulation theory brushes with pseudocidal tendencies. Like there's a certain level of peace that I've been able to glean from that like I don't really matter, because I matter just as much as everything else matters, and I am a part of that mattering. Like we are all inextricably linked in so many different ways that when the apocalypse happens, when we all turn into mush, like I'm just back together with all these parts that I've been fragmented from for, eons, right? And that's not me thinking that. That's just like a hopeful way of just seeing that, like, okay, I'm not afraid of death, but maybe I am like afraid of the pain before that, right? Like I don't want to be burned alive, but like, I do think that like transcending in that way, I guess going back to the like going beyond, like it's not even it's not voluntary, it's just fate in some way. Like we will go beyond. There is the plus ultra, to bring in my hero into it, of death, is that you like turn into and maybe bringing in religion here, like dust, but that dust is like so many like millionths to nano percentiles of you that get to be in and of everything as you already had been. And I'll stop there.
All these wounds and they will not heal. I just adapted to the way that it feel. Keep running ways, you'll fuck around and grow gills. I get so high, keep my distance from what ain't real. I get so high, it's like I'm walking on stairs. Stuck in my mind, still trying to keep it all still. To keep existing, I might have to exhale. Even if I lose, I ain't gon' never get failed.
I mean, dirt holds memory, water holds memory, breath holds memory.
This is I wanted to just bring up this thread of, maybe it's like substance, as something that like I think about substance, and that even if I try and think of another world or a world after this one or anything, like how grateful I am to have substantive things, like that the world has substance, and that there is a materiality, and that is like that is the medium through which all of this can exist. And like when I think of Alexis Pauline Gumbs, and I think of water, and I think of dirt and sand, that it is, I feel like that's what drew me to this, like getting beyond that, oh, that is me later, or that is me at another time, that was me before, and this is me now. And this is that I can grab soil and it can be somebody, literally. Like, and I feel like this, I keep talking about like this recognition as like a practice of gratitude, of like really sinking into those moments of truth, of like, I can't, like I can't think about anything that doesn't have a substance. I can't think of something that doesn't have like medium, or like it's always a record. And I wanted to bring up because Jackie was talking about these giant manatees, and one thing that Alexis Pauline Gumbs brings up is that they couldn't make any sounds. They had no vocal anything, like, and they couldn't click. They couldn't. So their life was purely to listen, or not their entire life, but like as a metaphor for like a lesson we can draw from it, of like a listening forever, a tuning in. And I think that something else I'd wanted to talk about in this episode with you all is movement, is dance. And like that there is a rhythm to this substance, and whether we're out of tune with it in certain moments of spasm, certain moments of rigidity or of anxiety or fear or something, but like the way that movement has allowed me throughout different periods of my life as a necessity to heal, as something that is not me really moving myself, but being moved by whatever else. And I mean, that's like music, of course. And but something that's so nice about like thinking about my time with you two in my life, Amir and Jasmine, is like I will never have a time again where I danced like I did when I was in South Africa. And it's just, I mean, it actually makes me quite sad. But like, I am really grateful that like I had friends and was in a place with a culture that was like so celebrated as a healing, communal, like tapping into this like rhythm of the substance around us and like within us, that it is everything. And yeah, I'm yeah, just like I don't know, I'm getting a little.
We did make Carson dance quite a bit. You said that in South Africa. I remember that. It was literally like, I've never danced this much. I was like, we're not even dancing that much. This is.
I mean, it was huge for me.
Wait, what was the context? Was this just like at a club or something, or was it were you listening to music?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
Yeah.
we always scout.
and then we had
You know,
to
free your ass and your mind will follow, right?
Yes, exactly. But it was
What?
like
Funkadelic, baby.
Have you not heard that? That's
free your ass, everyone.
That's an alchemical tenet from Funkadelic.
Yes.
I believe in it because, but I'll also, yeah, like that. We was out and about in Cape Town. Okay,
What was
I
it?
don't know
I want to
how
go to Cape Town so bad. What was the nightlife like?
It was good.
It's different. It's different now, but it was lit then.
Yeah,
I mean, then it was like we were going out to dance. Like,
oh, I'm just like, were we doing homework? Did we have classes?
I almost failed, like for a fact.
Oh my goodness!
I actually got a 50 on a course, but
I was. Go for it.
No, you go. You haven't spoken in a while.
I was just going to say that I was reminded of all this. Like, it's so funny. I love the synchronicities of like life, but I just went up to Montreal and we happened upon, basically we followed like this music. We went out to like there's like a gay village, like a neighborhood there, and we're walking around and followed this music that we heard, and we happened upon like this free concert that was like a Caribbean, like it was just all these Caribbean people, like, and there was this DJ, and it was like it was wild. It was I think there were a lot of people from Haiti, but it was like I haven't really experienced like a live like thing like that where the DJ is kind of like really going for it, like really yelling, like like, but it was so like one, it was free. Two, it was like families, and it wasn't just people between the ages of 20 and like 25, and it was like, and they were like, I don't know, there were like homeless people like coming in and out. There were people that had very like physical like differences, like disabilities and stuff, that were dancing, and I was just like,
Okay, but were there queer people?
Huh?
Were there queer people? That's my question.
That is a good question. I mean, it wasn't a visibly very queer event. I mean, yeah, but I guess, okay, maybe I'll just say that, like, queer as in, it's interesting because, I went from the gay village in this walk where it was, I look around and it's bars filled with men that look exactly like, dressed like my father, all between the ages of like 40 and 60. And I've never seen this really before. Like, I've been to like, the Castro in San Francisco, but like this in Montreal, it was like, okay, there's 150 like gay men between the ages of like 40 and 60, all at like this bar and this restaurant. And it's like, I went from there, and I was noting like the kind of funny homogeneity of that, of perfectly kempt beards, of just like specific things, and then moving to a space that was, I would say, like, there was more heterogeneity. There was more like, there's age differences. There were like, people just looked all very different in this like kind of free space, and I was like, I just miss like these public, I don't know, like, that you could just come through. There was no security, there was nothing. It's just like, this is just happening, and we can tune in and leave when we want. And like, that people were like really dancing, and yeah, I mean, just it felt healing, it felt good, and it did like make me think of times in South Africa where where things were different. I mean, maybe it was pre a vibe shift, a global vibe shift, but I'm very grateful that I got to experience that and take part in that.
Same. The one thing I'll say is that time, I mean, I was just coming off literally, losing my father. And so I think back to that version of myself, and I didn't know it then, but I think I was like so new and like free in a way. And to know that, I met you in that kind of like, because it's a very vulnerable place, but it's also like so like full of possibility. It's just interesting to think about, and to think about Jazz now in this place post grief, and meeting and interacting with her in this place, knowing that, what I'm hearing in the materiality is this like this sense of like, okay, there are these things, but they mean other things, which I think religion gives us. Because like water for me has always been like that. But the dancing has always just meant a lot.
Yeah. Agreed.
Wow, you're gonna leave it like that?
I wish.
I'm just gonna say, if you become my friends, you will be in a dance class, you will be at the club dancing, or you will be at a dance show. Sometimes you will experience all three. That's all I will say. That's my preferred method of connection before I talk to people.
That's cool.
It was funny. I was just, before we started this conversation, Amir and I were trying to remember when we last saw each other, and I was like, I think it was in New York, like 5 or 6 years ago. We went out to like the salsa club.
Yeah.
Wait. Oh my god,
it was like
Bembe? Oh my god, it was Bembe.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It was Bembe, and you were going in, like you were going in.
I mean, there was like a live like drummer. there was like
Yeah. Oh my god, that piece is so fun.
It was so crowded. It was so
Yeah.
It
crowded.
was.
But like to think about that as like an impossible thing now is so sad.
Oh my
And maybe
God.
it's just for me personally, like that it's like impossible to find in my life again. But yeah, we were talking about that, and I lost where I was going. Oh, and you also on the same trip, you all took us to an Alvin Ailey show. And that was the only time I've ever seen a dance performance. I was like,
I know.
oh my god, like that was just, you don't remember this? It's so funny. This was all like huge for me, where I was like, I
remember that.
I wish that if I like
That wasn't the
Going back
same
to this
time,
thing
though,
of, like-
regardless.
it wasn't.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Oh.
I have to check
Like-
my journals.
Yeah.
I wish I was a dancer, you know? I wish that if I could live again, and, you know, maybe through this conversation I will live again, you know? Like, that I will be more of a dancer, or can, like, be in a form that is more in tune with, like, the rhythm of the materials, the rhythms of... I feel like maybe that's where, like, the marine mammal comes in as like a figure that is in like a substance that is not air, and an unbreathable world. But like, I don't know, I'm trying to draw something from this that I feel like obviously the book just does so much.
Well, I've got something to thread it. It just is the okay, we're probably kind of on our way to wrapping up, but like, I think that one of the things that Alexis Pauline Gumbs, and that I've seen a lot of people in the like black, like African American or like diasporic tradition like highlight, is this these moments where you get outside of the language that you're in, or where like language fails to articulate what the thing is. And I think Alexis Pauline Gumbs sketches that out with this, with these sites of embodiment, like in these different marine mammals and in these different like ritual spell things that she does, and also just in she uses the language of like a sort of like colonized form of science that like identifies these animals very particular ways, and kind of like, in defining them, closes them off from their actual like spirited existence. And she starts using that kind of language, and then in each section will then bring a more spirited like appraisal of the beings that she's talking about, and then she'll like, you know, knit in all these other dynamics to them. But I just feel like these moments when like language is like, it becomes inarticulable in English, those are like really cool moments that happen in like dance, and in like focusing on breath, and in wondering about like blowing one's mind or the apocalypse, and also in grief. These things you can't actually say, you know, like you were saying, like if you're, once you've experienced it, then you're in the know, but you can't just tell somebody what that's like, you know. It's something that goes beyond what you can say. But so we use the language we have to try to like get outside it, you know, to try to go beyond it in these sort of moments. But then like sometimes you need something other than language too.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I have one or two more things to add. Because when I was thinking about the dancing thing, I was thinking about the body. And I've been thinking, the last time I was here, I'm at an artist residency right now, and the last time I was here, there's this visual artist who works in like sculpture, and I was working on performance at the time, and he was like, he kept asking about what it meant or how it was to do performance, because he explores like autobiography but through the visual, and so there is a medium, to use Carson's word, that like he imbues, right, with this story, or like and then I was like, That's interesting because it allows them some distance, it allows them some separation, that kind of thing. And I think the same is true of words. Words carry power. In Genesis, I always point to this. The first thing is that God's voice moved across the waters. Even before He breathed breath into Adam. The breath, of course, pre-existed that, but it was the voice that moved that kind of gave way to creation. And I'm just thinking, since then, and reflecting on, there's this show. It's called Lovecraft Country. Lovecraft Country, such a good show. Jazz, have you seen it? I think you would enjoy it.
Yeah, I tried to watch it. I couldn't get into it, but a lot of people love it.
The witch, one of the witches, she's just like, for a spell, you need a word, an intention, and the body, or something like that. And I think that's what makes performance. And I kind of learned the difference between performance energetically and art. And I think that's what makes performance and dance so powerful, is that the body's on the line. The body becomes the kind of the thing on the altar, the sacrifice, so to speak. And so energetically, I think it just moves things in a different way. And the body with the word, the spoken word, I think, yeah, it just has a different kind of resonance in the spiritual. That's what I offer.
Yeah, I have this quote here that I think I really like what you said about the voice, and I'm just going to read this. This was from something that was guiding me through a lot of this. Is from this book, Breathing Again. He writes, I intend to emphasize here the ontological meaning of rhythm. Foundationally, rhythm refers not only to vocal emissions or to the sound of acoustic matter, but also to the vibration of the world. Rhythm is the inmost vibration of the cosmos. And poetry is an attempt to tune into this cosmic vibration, this temporal vibration that is coming and coming and coming. And I feel like that's maybe what I had to learn throughout a really difficult period of illness in my life, was that poetry and movement or dance was so necessary to use as excesses of of getting outside of myself, of getting outside of the stasis or spasm that I was in. And that I feel like maybe something in this conversation that's become apparent to me is that the substance is there, God is there, and it's about this this ability to maybe that faith, because again I'm trying to work with from not much understanding of this, that faith is this calling out to something that is there. And I'm thinking of Alexis Pauline Gumbs and her talking about echolocation of marine mammals again, of this ability to call out and have something call back, and the knowing that there is a beyond this, and that for me to find ways of tapping into that, or for all of us, because it's not just me, we're communally creating poetry, dance, whatever, and that I feel like maybe this is just what's been, of course, lost in this Western white boring mundane world of reason, and that it's not, it doesn't get at the truth a lot of the time, and how to get at something that is feels more truthful to me. but also is just like truthful in a way that it is what is. I don't know how else to say it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Jazz, Amir, if you have any plugs for anything, right? Like any performances coming up, or do you want us to read your essay or your writing, Jazz? Please let people know how to find it or send it to, us. Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to invite that before we move to the manifesto, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, no, I'll send you guys a link. I don't really have much to share right now. Oh, follow my page for my film/film production company, Some Kind of Heavenly Films. Yeah, on Instagram.
All the links will be in the show notes.
I guess you can follow me, Amir. It's Amir Zing Grace at the that's my username on Instagram. AmirZingGrace.
Well, hey, well, I'm gonna read this one more time, and then if you all can have anything that you're feeling called to, we've said you can mutate this in any way you'd like. You can make a substitution, you can delete something, you can add something, you can swap something, however. So we have 1, not 2, sky and seed sown, dream up shadows to love through, shape change in the nether pool and drown with friends, to arise anew again and again. I think also, if we're taking from Alexis Pauline Gumbs, like but I don't want to just like plagiarize stuff.
No, we did that from Octavia Butler already.
True. Wait, I wanted to also bring up that I saw something that was the parable of the sower.
Oh yeah, it was literally on my solar return. It was literally on my solar return
in July of 2024.
Well, no, it literally takes the first entry of it takes place on my 30th, or like on my 30th solar return. Like literally.
No way.
Yeah, that's the first entry in A Parable of the Sower is when I had this crazy solar return, because also like the moon was also a full moon in Capricorn, which is my moon. It was a very crazy time for me. I was out in the woods doing ceremonies with the fire. But yeah.
The dream of shadows to love through shape change in the love for drama with friends arise anew again and again. Oh, maybe even a new line break again and again. But I'm also yearning for something specific.
Yeah,
something
I agree.
like grounded. You know?
Yeah, this has been so wishy-washy poetry stuff that doesn't really... Yeah. It would be nice to have an actual actionable thing here. Yeah, that's definitely been the problem of this process.
I was gonna identify maybe places that might give us opportunities, like maybe the shape change, because it changes from one thing to another, so we could add a line about like from this to this or this to this, and that might fit with the rhythm. And then friends can be more specific, or even like like what are they wearing, what kinds of friends are these, where is this drowning happening. I could see it, like, for some reason, like from this conversation, the environment of the clubs in Cape Town is very vivid in my head. Maybe bringing some of that in.
I'm thinking maybe like shape change from breath to breath or something, and then also I think maybe this could be a time when we change the drown part. Maybe like it's like a dance or something, and dance, move, something like that. So like shape change from breath to breath.
If you shake your ass, you open your what? Open your mind, shake your ass.
No, free your mind and your ass will follow, right? That's the funkadelic.
Free your ass and your mind will follow. I suggest we each take we time it, and we take 1 minute to write a line, each of us. And the line.
To write a what exactly?
Sorry?
To write what did you say?
Line. One line.
Line, okay.
however long, however, whatever. And the line should
like that.
respond or build on either dream up shadows to love through or drown with friends.
No one else here in sky sees a dream of shadows to live through and hold their.
Okay, I think this is good.
Agreed.
Yeah. Jazz, will you do the honor?
Okay, yes, I will. Is it no one or not one?
No one.
Okay. No one, not two, in sky and seed sown, dream up shadows to love through and hold their calloused hands. Shape change in the nether pool from breath to breath. As your mind is freed, your ass will follow, then arise anew again and again. Amen.
Thank you guys so much. So good to meet you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you all for coming on. For agreeing to do this.
I really love how this is people. Yeah, it's fun. Good talking to you
This
guys.
is great. Hold on, I'm gonna stop recording.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
And did the loose booty. Skip it back and monkey it. Jump and twist. Nonsense. Get it. Emma Lily went out on the block to cop. She got there, the pussy was gone. Cause he had a joint of his own. He did the loose booty. Skip it back and monkey it. Jump into it.